into order. Barb, would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Beveridge, Mr. Boyd, Mr. Connell,
Here.
Mrs. Felter,
Here.
Mr. Kuhn,
Here.
Mrs. Steele,
Here.
Mr. Wycliffe.
Here. And now I think we have students from Clearwater Creek to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Awesome.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Dr. McMullen?
Well, good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's Olathe Public Schools Board of Education meeting. Before we begin, we feel it is important that we review the importance of conducting a productive and orderly meeting. This meeting is designated for the board to work with the superintendent and staff to conduct the work as outlined in the agenda. Please understand that patrons attending the meeting do so solely in an observatory role. Out of respect for everyone in the attendance, we request that audience members not speak, yell, or give applause during the meeting. This ensures the board, staff, and other attendees are able to listen and understand the business conducted. Anyone disrupting the meeting in any capacity will be asked to leave and may lose the opportunity to attend future meetings. Thank you again for attending, and we'll now proceed with the agenda.
Thank you. Moving on to 2.01, the adoption of the agenda. I'd entertain a motion to adopt said agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented to the Board of Education on 2/2/23.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Connell, a second by Mrs. Felter.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Mrs. Felter,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to recognitions and awards. Becky?
Good evening, everybody. As we move into awards and recognitions, I'd just like to take a moment to welcome all of our distinguished guests. And first, we'd like to invite Olathe South senior Austin Allen to the front, along with his principal, Dale Longnecker. Oh, it might just be you. Do you want me to start in a different order? Yes. Okay, we're just gonna do an audible, guys, in the spirit of Chiefs and football. Okay, so first, we would like to invite our middle school mathletics overall winners from the fall competition to be recognized. So please join me in welcoming our four first place winning teams to the front. So come on up, you guys. This is a large group of some smart kiddos. The Olathe Middle School Mathletics competition is for students who love math and enjoy competing with other middle school students. There are 3 district competitions and 1 regional competition for students in grades 6, 7, and 8 each year.
Hey, Rod, how are you? Good to see you.
All right, when you hear your name, I just ask that you step forward, and then at the end, we'll take a really big group picture. So at the 6th grade level, our first place winners are from Frontier Trail Middle School, and that includes Ian Clark, Caleb C., Nathan Zhang, and Tristan Erb. And they are here tonight with their principal, Rod Smith, and their coach. Now, in the 7th grade category, our winners are from Chisholm Trail, and those students are Connor McRosty, Will Brotherson, Declan Hodges, and Eric Lynn. And they're here with Rick Sola and their coach as well. And in the 8th grade, we had too many smart kids. There was a tie for first. So our first place winners in 8th grade are from California Trail, and that is Mahi Kohli, Anay Chatterjee, Manu Shripathi, and Sanjay Kailad. And they're here with Mike Wiley. And then also tied for first place was our Prairie Trail Middle School students, and they include Aiden Olson, Keaton Yim, Mehar Singh, and Santosh Subramanian. And they're here with Principal Jenna Jones. And all right, folks, I don't know how we're gonna do this.
If I can have Frontier Trail on the front, and then if I could have the other students kind of gather behind Frontier Trail, and then we'll have the adults on the sides. So Prairie Trail is gonna come forward, and then California Trail comes over here. Come on, Chisholm. Can I have you over here, Chisholm? Find the window. Is that prepared? Yeah. You just get in there, find the window, squeeze together. One big little family.
There you go.
Hey! See all these cameras? Smile there. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Six.
And one more. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Move out of the way.
Keep smiling.
There is a lot of this in the future for this crew right here.
Awesome. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you guys very much.
My daughter's team finished third.
Such a good problem to have. Too many kids, we can't get them all in the photo, right? Okay, I see our next special guest is here, so I'd like to invite Olathe South senior Austin Allen to the front, along with his principal, Dale Longnecker. Austin won Best in Show for his multimedia entry in the 2023 Martin Luther King Jr. Visual and Written Arts Contest. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. That was the theme of this year's contest that more than 500 middle and high school students entered in 3 categories: multimedia, writing, and visual arts. A public observance of Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy and recognition of the contest winners was held on January 15th at Olathe Northwest High School. Each year, the celebration enables Olathe youth to promote a society free of bullying, discrimination, and mistreatment of others based on race, gender, or religion by sharing their beliefs in writing, visual artwork, or mixed media presentations. Contest winners received cash prizes, and partners from this year's celebration were not on my script. So really with it tonight. Let's just take a moment to watch Austin's award-winning video titled Affected Affection.
What affects one directly affects all indirectly. You see, a pastor is just a person who preaches his word, but his word inspires hundreds to spread a gospel that no one's ever heard. A teacher is just a person who teaches to their class, but their teachings will make leaders who will succeed down their own path. A chef is just a person who devotes himself to the kitchen, but little do they know that their food will be served to millions. An athlete is just a person who strives to be elite, but their passion and love motivates kids around the world to compete. All of these opportunities, these passions and goals, so why is there still hatred, arguments, and problems back at home? Well, I'd like to just take a minute and sit down to propose that even though we don't admit it, prevent it, or end it, there's hate everywhere we go. You see, a racist is not a person, but is an action of hate, forced to separate us, split us apart, and continue to segregate. A sexist is not a person, but is an offensive phrase to belittle and torment people in hurtful ways. A bully is not a person, but an enemy of love, using words to divide us and make you feel like you're not enough, but those words can hit harder than any stone, make you feel like you're useless and worthless and all alone. And just for a minute, I'd like to take this time to honor our brother, Brian Almazadi, a friend and a teammate that was like no other. Now, I may not know the full story, but I know that whatever he was going through was enough to make him feel like his best option was just giving up. Such a selfless person who was gone too soon, but this is just one of the things that we need to improve. We can start with spreading love, no matter the circumstance. We must stop the hatred and cruelty, but it won't happen by chance. You see, love is just a feeling, but it's a feeling of hope, a feeling that brings us together, the young and the old. So we should love through the storm, and we should love through the snow. We should love in the sunshine and everywhere we go. Because you see, love is a decision, but that decision is up to you. When faced with that question, what will you choose to do? So what affects you will always affect me. We're all fighting for equality. Always fighting for equality.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
And that concludes our awards and recognitions for the evening.
I think that's the right call. All right, we will move on to information presentations. Our school spotlight tonight is Clearwater Creek.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. I'm excited to share a little bit and give you a little glimpse into what is happening over at Clearwater Creek this year. As you can see, we have opened our doors in 2004, and this is our 18th school year, and in my personal third year as principal. We have 540 students. In fact, we had 540 students when I sent this to Barb last week. Today we have 543. I had a couple new students, and that's a little picture of them just a couple weeks ago as we were doing our Major Saver kickoff. And we have 72 staff that wake up each morning and come to work, and you can see a picture of them right there after our first day of school. A couple pieces of data for us. At the end of last school year, we had 86% of our students were above or beyond level 1 in ELA, and 90% of our students were beyond level 1 in math. For us, our focus for BSEL has been around emotional regulation and grit, and it has been that way for the past 3 years that I have served at Clearwater. Coming out of the pandemic, and I took over in kind of the first year of COVID, we really focused and continued to focus on our positive relationships, knowing kids have needed that connectedness to school. And we focused on that in any year, but we focused really hard on building those relationships, not only with our kids, but with our families. We are also in our first full year of PBIS implementation. In fact, we just passed our fidelity check, Dr. Fluke, yesterday, and so we're really excited about that, and we begin our Tier 2 procedures starting on Monday, and so we're very excited about that as well. And we've also been focusing on raising and advancing our student achievement with our MTSS interventions, learning more about those and pushing into those, as well as the PLC work that our staff is doing on a weekly basis. Something unique about us, we have a theme every year that our BLT decides upon, and we make it a theme not only for our kids, but for our staff. So the theme we landed on this year was the power of we, and we took this graphic in the upper left there, we over me, and wanted to impart this on our kids, teach them about it, teach them the power of we and really valuing service. And so to kick off our school year, you see a collection of pictures. Our staff, on the very first day of pre-service, we had a little donation of $20 for every group of staff, and we put together teams of staff so that they were with people they don't normally teach with and see. And our PTC gave $20 for us to get out and serve and kind of practice the we over me. And so you can see we did a variety of just fun things and giving back to the Olathe community. Our staff, one group purchased a bunch of games and just left them out with a fun sign for kids at Lake Olathe Park. One group surprised Westside Elementary secretaries with some coffee for all of their hard work and wanted to recognize them. We had a couple groups that showed up at Mission Southside to give a little love and treats to the workers there. Had another group that performed some random acts of kindness at Cherry Street Bakery. Another group surprised construction workers on a hot summer day with some cool drinks from Sonic, and also had some random acts of kindness happening out at Quick Trip, as well as our district copy center. And so we kicked off our year, our first day back, getting out and serving and giving back to community with some fun little surprises. Our BLT also took some we over me activities and planned some broad scale activities for our students to participate in, as well as teachers have kind of picked up that and taken and run with the ball in their own classroom. So each quarter we've had some big activities. So you can see we had a food drive our first quarter that supported Mission Southside. We brought in over 12,000 items of food over the course of a week, which we're really excited about. And you can see helping load those food items up. Our second quarter we had a book drive to support our Title I schools here in Olathe, and we brought in over 1,000 books over the course of a week. Our fifth graders took a field trip over to Harvesters and did some service and learned on that. And then just like I said, countless other little things that our classroom teachers have taken. You can see a group down there in the bottom that kind of chalked our walk one random day just to spread some positivity out as well. And so we'll continue working that and giving some good, valuable learning experiences. Something else we worked really hard on along the BSEL lines is Wellness Wednesdays. So every morning our students get video announcements from me. And on Wednesdays, we call it Wellness Wednesdays, we stop and teach explicitly SEL skills. And 2 years ago, we adopted the zones of regulation as our common language, ways to talk about emotions, ways to teach emotions, ways to identify and the feelings that you're feeling, as well as on the bottom part of that, a little toolkit. So if I'm feeling like I'm in the yellow zone or the red zone, how can I get my body back to green? What are some things that we can do? And so my counselors and I sat down and planned out lessons that we've explicitly taught just through our video announcements in the morning. And then the teachers, when those are over, can stop and extend that out and make it appropriate for, a kindergarten classroom versus a 4th or 5th grade classroom. And so we found those to be very valuable and much needed in this time as well. And so other things we've covered in those Wellness Wednesdays, apart from our emotional regulation, have been just the importance of staying physically healthy, getting enough sleep, taking care of our bodies, making and maintaining those healthy friendships, sportsmanship, how to solve problems. And my counselors and I sit down at the beginning and just look at what are the things that are coming across our desks and that are really pertinent to our student body at that time, and how can we help just impart some skills and give them more, just equip them more in that SEL arena. And so we've found that to be helpful, and really for us, as one of the larger schools, we have 2 counselors, and we've really felt that positive impact. Our staff has felt that, our students have felt that. We certainly have the needs to support those counselors as well. And so we have found that to be a great, great asset for us. I mentioned PBIS earlier. Our 3 big values at Clearwater are: we are ready, we are safe, and we are respectful. And I mentioned we just kind of went through the first year of this, and our students have the opportunity to earn Coyote Cash. And you can see a little graphic of the Coyote Cash anytime they're showing those ready, safe, and respectful behaviors, and they can save up those Coyote Cash to not only get just stuff like pencils and erasers and cups, stickers, but we also, as a team, found it valuable to provide experiences. And so we have a school store. They can purchase different things. So you can see they can dress up the principal for the morning announcements. There's the principal in a princess dress and a lamb hat. That has quickly become the fan favorite. And they can co-host morning announcements. There's one of our 4th graders there co-hosting announcements and various other things. They can have lunch with friends. They can help out teachers and help out our office staff. And that has been just a good way to kind of reinforce those expected behaviors that we want to see from our students. When Becky asked me to present, she talked about what makes our school great, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our staff. 72 people that get up every morning and come and serve our students and put everything they have into our students. As a staff, we are committed. We are a team. Someone, in fact, told me today at the copy machine, I've not worked in a school where everyone is willing to support one another in those challenging times. And so you can see just a variety of things going on here, and fun, having fun. We've had the foundation out a couple times in the last several years, and this group of people, I just feel very fortunate and privileged to be working alongside. And finally, what makes our school so great is our community. Our community is deeply invested in our school. They're in our school on a regular basis. A tradition that I stepped into that we've been happy to reboot has been the Watchdogs tradition. We had over 200 families come for a Watchdog kickoff. I think we had 60 or 70 pizzas that night, and hardly a day goes by where we don't have 2 Watchdogs in our school. And so our families in particular, our dads, are eager to get in and spend time serving our staff, serving our students, and being involved. See, we've got community members in there, dad from Olathe Fire, dad from Waste Management, and then one of our teacher's spouse from Olathe Fires in there, talking to our 1st graders and our kindergartners about what it means to be a community worker. We're happy to reboot our Veterans Day Assembly this year and had over 70 veterans from the Clearwater Creek community come in and be recognized and celebrated for their service as well. And finally, our parent group, our PTC, is a huge part. When I ask staff about what makes, what should I talk about when I come to the school board, I said our PTC is a big part of what makes our school so great. They support us, they have events, we've got Breakfast with Santa down here, but they also give back. They work hard to raise money to put right back into our classrooms and right back to support student learning. So got some bells and whistles. We got some new pod furniture lately. They help support an outdoor classroom up there with the concrete pad and then tables that we put down after that. And again, they just are very, very supportive of the work that we do and the staff that we have. So yes, that is all. So thanks for letting me share a little bit about Clearwater Creek, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you for that. That's awesome, and I love the community involvement. Questions from the board?
I would just, a little known fact about Mr. Kramer is that he's actually a secondary guy. His teaching experience and his administrative experience prior to going to Clearwater Creek. So I think 10 years ago, if you would have asked him if he'd be wearing lamb ears and a princess dress, he may not have believed it, but he's doing a great job along with his amazing team at Clearwater.
Don't tell the secondary people that.
Others?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, 4.02, we will hear from Learning Services.
Good evening. I'm Luann Hermrich. I'm the interim superintendent for Learning Services working this year. We are pleased, my team and I, to represent Learning Services this evening as we focus on a few of the goal areas in our department. This young man we see here is Theo. And Theo is one of the 29,345 students we serve every day as we work to support the district goals of academic achievement and social emotional growth. Our Learning Services team is very comprehensive, and I think you'll see that as you look at the areas in our department: school improvement, assessment, curriculum, behavior, social emotional learning, BSEL, as we've heard mentioned this evening, instructional technology, library media, professional development, instructional coaching, new educator, university partnerships, and our special services team. So as you can see, Learning Services is a very comprehensive team and full of excellent folks working every day on behalf of our students. We are but one of the district teams supporting our students, supporting our principals and our parents, our teacher teams, working toward the goal of student learning. I really liked this graphic representation because it represents all of the teams wrapped around student learning and all of us working together continuously for this initiative, which focuses on a continuous improvement initiative, zeroing in on our students. While I've given you just a general overview of Learning Services, what we did want to do tonight is drill down on 3 specific areas in our department. Professional learning, you're going to hear from Mrs. Jenna Cooter. Assessment and school improvement, an update with Dr. Julie Veach, and multi-tier system of support, MTSS, with Dr. Scott Fluke. I'll make a brief closing comment, and then we'd love to answer any questions you may have for us. Jenna.
Good evening, I'm Jenna Cooter, and very pleased to share some information with you about professional learning. As Luann shared, we have lots of departments within our learning services department that really make up the team, and those teams really do support all of these other teams that we have within our system. And one of the things about professional learning is that it touches all of these teams in some way or another, and so it's a really important key piece that we have as part of our system. So tonight I'd like to share with you the purpose of professional learning, but also a brief timeline of some professional learning experiences that we have across our system, and also how we utilize feedback in order to gather information from our staff, from our system, so that we can really improve our professional learning experiences across our system. So the purpose of professional learning really is to have a positive impact on student learning. So we really work to improve educator practice so that we can have that positive impact on student learning. And I think, seeing the students here tonight, we were all just reminded of that is our purpose here in the Olathe Public Schools. So just wonderful things that are happening. Student learning is truly the reason that we are here. So I want to share with you next just a little bit of a timeline of some professional learning experiences that we have across our system throughout the year. All of our professional learning experiences really do support the strategic plan. That is the foundation of all of the learning that we do across our system. The priority outcomes and the initiatives from the strategic plan encompass what we do in professional learning. So at the beginning of the year, we have our administrative staff meeting that really helps us to set the purpose. Dr. Yeager and our senior leadership team set the stage for our administrators, and it really does help to provide clarity and consistency for the priorities and also to set the focuses for the year. Then we're lucky enough to have days before all of our returning staff come to focus with our new educators. So we have our new educator orientation, and Dr. Ann Addison, who's our Director of New Educator Induction and University Partnerships, along with our instructional coaches, our coordinators, directors, we have master teachers and building mentors and building administrators who really do help to lead this work and provide guidance for our new educators in the areas of curriculum and instruction, school safety, mandatory reporting, behavioral supports, all of those things. So it really does give our new educators the information that they need in order to find out what supports we have within our system. So after we have our new educator induction, we launch into our all staff learning and pre-service at the building and district levels. We have learning services and building administration, district administrators and building leadership teams who really do direct that learning across our system so that our staff can be prepared for the new year. We also have learning for our classified staff, our food services, our paraeducators, instructional aides, so that they can be ready to support students as well. Throughout the year, we have district, building, and job-embedded professional learning activities. This occurs on our district professional learning days, but also through our professional learning communities. We have teams that support our PLCs. They come in and provide that job-embedded professional learning as well. Our departments have time to pull educators as needed to really help to support our department chairs and team leads at our secondary level, and also working through curriculum. Our learning services department has monthly meetings so that we can keep up to date on all of the work across our system. And Julie will tell you a little bit more about our administrative meetings and SILN so that we can continue to have that those learning experiences across our system. We do also offer some choice sessions for educators who are ready to go a little bit deeper. We have our Epic Learning Series, which really is specifically designed for our new educators, but anyone is welcome, and often the mentors of our new educators attend with them as well. We also have Big 3 Tuesdays, Tuesdays set aside to look a little bit deeper into learning experiences that have been initiated at district or building professional learning sessions. We've had sessions on positive self-care, the culture setter, some literacy activities for small group activities. We have some in-person sessions as well as some self-paced sessions for educators who would like to do a little bit more on their own. We also have an individual action plan process that allows educators to engage in their own action research projects. And we do have some opportunities for out-of-district activities for educators to attend local and national conferences. And then in the summer, we're gearing up for this. We have our annual Olathe Summer Conference. It's been in place for more than 25 years, and so we're very excited to be able to bring national presenters to our staff. It's something that we offer for free to our staff, and we tend to have over 1,000 participants with that. So we have summer learning opportunities focused with technology and also summer projects so that our departments continue their work as well. Throughout the year, we ask our staff for feedback in a variety of ways, and we take that feedback very seriously. We analyze it, we look at it very carefully, we respond to questions, but then we utilize that feedback to really make improvements in logistics and planning and being able to respond to the needs that our staff have expressed. We work really very hard to ensure that professional learning is meaningful and impactful for our staff. And it really does continue to be a valuable part of our system to support that relevant instructional practices. And all of those really do help to support student learning in our classrooms. So I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Julie Veach, and Dr. Veach will highlight some assessment features for this school year.
Thank you, Jenna. So school improvement and assessments are the pieces that I would like to highlight. And contrary to popular belief, assessments are not just about the Kansas State assessments. We do so much more with that to help support our teachers and our administrators throughout the district. When we look at the assessment program, just to kind of give you a frame of reference, a big piece for us this year has been really honing in on that assessment literacy as we work with administrators at all levels, including the district level, building, whatever that may be, as well as we work with teachers. And by assessment literacy is that whole idea that we have to understand what it is that we're trying to assess and how we're going to use that data. So we really need a purpose out there in thinking through, and not just as the end of the unit, how am I going to give a test, but really what are we doing with the data that we have in front of us. A key piece that we talked about this fall when I was before you was looking at FastBridge. We had the early adoption this last spring with just a few of our buildings, and then we were able to launch that K through 8 here district-wide as we started with the fall. When we look at that, the key piece for us, the main purpose of us using FastBridge is it really is that whole idea that it provides our universal screeners so that we know if our students are hitting the mark and on track to make progress with both their reading and their math. And in doing that, then we can in turn, that guides us with any interventions that might be needed, guides us with some things that we might want to focus on. For example, in terms of high yield routines that we might want to put in place for all students to help strengthen any particular skill that we might notice. We give those 3 times a year. And so right away as we start the fall is when they take their first screener, then we come back around again in the winter, and then we'll follow up at the end of the year. And it's really nice because it gives us just a really nice pathway of knowing where our students are with all of that. In addition to that, we are able to use that for some progress monitoring because we would never do a screener at one point for like fall, for example, and then wait again until winter. So if we have any students that are a higher level of concern, we want to progress monitor along the way to know that we are hitting the right things in regards to the interventions that we may have in place for a student. We also utilize the ACT suite here in the district, and that is at our high school level. So for the first time, we have our 9th graders that are participating in the pre-ACT 8-9. And then we have our 10th graders that are taking the pre-ACT 10. Our 11th graders are doing the practice ACT. And so we use those 3 pieces, again, to help our high school teachers really hone in on just making sure that our students, once again, they're on track. We can see where some gaps might be. It really gives us that comparative measure, if you will, against the nation, if you want, But more than anything, it really helps our teachers also know, gosh, can we predict how students might perform on the actual ACT? You know, as I shared with you this fall, that is such a high priority for our high schoolers. Like, they want to know, you know, are they going to be able to be competitive for some scholarship money or whatever the case may be. And then, even though those are all like big, if you will, kind of assessments, we also help teachers focus on just what are some common assessments that they're giving and how are we using that data. And so by common assessment, I would want to know, gosh, if I am at Mission Trail or Oregon Trail or Prairie Trail, whatever building it is, and I move to a comparable building, you know, same grade level building across the district, am I on the same pace? Am I learning the same things? How do we know, even within the building, that from one teacher to the next, we're focused on the same thing and we have the same level of expectations for our kids? So when we look at all of that, it's like, that's a lot of information, and how are we going to use it? For us, one of the key things that we do is that we want to, kind of tying back into the professional learning, is how do we utilize professional learning communities and working with them on that assessment literacy, so the why and the how for their data. And so with that data, we really start looking at how we can identify and act on individual student needs, how we can look at classroom needs, how we can look at individual building needs, and then ultimately, you know, is there something there as a system, as an entire district, that we need to come back and focus on and take another look at? When we look at those components right there, we also, that allows us, if you will, we really lean into, as Jenna noted earlier, SILM, which is that School Improvement Leadership Network. We also lean into principal meetings and working with our CNI, or Curriculum and Instruction administrators for each of our secondary schools. So as we do that, first turning towards that School Improvement Leadership Network that we call SILM, that is a meeting that we have twice a year, and we ask building leaders to bring in their teacher leaders for some pretty intense, focused time in terms of really hitting on what are things that we can do to help them empower their teachers within their buildings. How can they really hone in on knowing, as a building, what is it that we want to focus on in terms of our student achievement? And then what are some things that they can help put in place, whether it be some different structures, frameworks. You know, I think right now, as we launched this fall, a big thing for us was the strategy playbook that we had out there that Kelly Tynes worked so hard to get our folks up and running with. But, you know, how they can use that to impact what they're doing in the classroom, which ultimately impacts the student achievement. And so we have that meeting in the fall, and then we turn around again in the spring. And so in the spring, it's all about where have we been so far this year? How do we know we're making that growth? And then kind of being able to set the stage of, wow, you know, as we take that next step on our journey leading into summer, preparing for the next fall, what do we as an individual building need to be able to do? The thing about Olathe that's pretty unique is that, you know, as you know, we're this very large system, right? We have over 56 buildings that participate in all of this. And so where some smaller districts in Kansas, they can just design it, lay it out, and say, there you go, buildings. For us, it really is about empowering those buildings. Every single building is unique. All the kids within that community, they will have some unique things that might show through in the different data that we utilize. And so we have to help them understand how to use that, and then how to come in and frame their work that they're going to be doing with their students and their staff. The other key piece that I have been very excited to participate in, both as an administrator at the building level and now here at the district level, and that's the whole idea of how we utilize our principal meetings, and then how we utilize the curriculum and instruction meetings for those administrators at both the secondary, middle, and high school level. And so when we look at that, we make sure that, and I say we, really, it's our general administrators. So when you look at Dr. McMullen and Mr. Albers and Dr. Reeves, it really is them allowing us to have time carved into every single monthly meeting with them, that we can come in and we can continue on this whole piece of assessment literacy. So we want to continue to work with our principals on how they interpret and use their data, how they are looking at intervention intensification, if that's needed, and being able to have that continuous review of them knowing, okay, what's going to be the next step of that process, and us being able to train and give them the resources they need to then turn around and work with their buildings. And then ultimately with that is that just the continuous review of how to, again, guide their teams and guide their professional learning communities. So having said all of that, I am now going to pass it off to Dr. Flug, who is going to give you some more details on MTSS here in Olathe.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Fluke. I'm happy to represent our MTSS leadership team as I briefly describe our MTSS framework. MTSS stands for Multi-Tier Systems of Supports. It is a broad framework that really supports all of our instruction across literacy, math, and social emotional learning and behavior. And like Julie said, our comprehensive assessment program really gives us a treasure trove of information on the strengths and the needs of our individual students, of grade levels, schools, and buildings, and the whole district. And then the question really becomes, what action steps can we take with that data? And MTSS is the answer to that question. It really guides us in taking those action steps with that data so that we can meet the goal that you see on the slide there, that every student deserves lessons that meet their specific need. And MTSS is really complex. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of stuff to it. But really, that is it in one sentence. It's giving every student the instruction they deserve because it's designed to meet their specific needs. But of course, Olathe is a very large system. How do we scale that goal to almost 30,000 kids, dozens of buildings, thousands and thousands of staff members? This graphic tries to summarize all of that work. It takes a lot of effort by a lot of different teams to scale that goal to all of those folks. But MTSS in a nutshell really is these 5 categories of strategies that again cut across our literacy, math, and behavior and social emotional learning. It starts in the classroom with our core instruction. It starts with what our teachers are doing every day with students, the good, solid, high quality care that they're giving to kids every single day when they walk through the door, from preschool all the way through high school. But even though we know that our core instruction is really high quality, we also know that many students will need more. That is a truism across all of education, that some students will need more. It is incumbent on us as a school district to find those kids. And we do that through the universal screening that Julie described. A brief, simple assessment given to all students that quickly flags who might need a little bit more. You'll notice the core instruction and universal screening are for all students. Then the next 3 categories are for the some students that may or may not flag on those universal screening assessments. So for example, students that flag on universal screening might receive some follow-up diagnostic assessment to really answer 2 questions. 1, are they truly a good candidate for intervention? Or maybe they just had a rough day the day they took that universal screening measure. No problem, right back to the core instruction. But if we find that they actually do need a little bit more, then the next question becomes, what do they need? What supports and interventions are right for them? That's what that follow-up assessment does. It would be impossible to do that for all 30,000 of our kids, so we use the universal screening practices to narrow down the right students who need that level of follow-up service. And then of course, now that we've got this information, now that we know who needs help and what help they need, we're able to have targeted evidence-based interventions for literacy, math, and behavior and social emotional learning that are really setting students up for long-term success by filling the gaps that may exist for whatever reason, whether that's the pandemic or something else, some gaps in learning that may be there so that we can support them in that way. And then finally, progress monitoring those interventions so that we know for sure that we are closing the gap, and if not, know what those next steps are. There's a lot to that, and of course we could go into far more detail than I can do in a couple of minutes. But to humanize that just a little bit, just some real brief stories. I was just talking to Spencer Brown, our math coordinator. He was sitting with a PLC not too long ago, and they've been working through this process with their kids, especially with math. And he was sitting with this team, and what they described is not just 1, not 2, not 3, but a vast majority of their students have made significant growth on all the measures that they have in the classroom as a result of high quality core instruction and good targeted interventions for the kids that need it. One of our support specialists in reading shared a story with me that she went into a classroom in 4th grade and sat down and listened to a student read. He did a great job with his accuracy. He did a great job with his fluency. And he was even adding a little bit of expression to his story, getting a little voice in there. She got up to leave and the principal stopped her and said, I just need you to know this young man has been working so hard in his intervention groups. And it wasn't that long ago that he would have never, ever read in front of a stranger. But today he reads to you. And just how proud that principal was of the progress that young man had made. Another support specialist shared a story of a middle school student who not long ago was working on just decoding the symbols on the page and understanding the sounds that go with those symbols, had some missing skills there, and is now through the interventions really moved on to fluency and felt confident enough in herself reading for the first time that she actually tried out for the middle school play, got the part. And if you've ever been in a middle school play, you know that's a lot of reading in front of a lot of people. It takes a lot of confidence. I'm very, very proud of that young lady to make that progress. And my last one, on the behavior side of things, a student, a fourth grader on the east side of town, a quiet boy in class, but when the work gets hard, he gets disruptive. Has a hard time kind of controlling his emotions in class when the work gets hard. The school has universal screening processes in place. They found this need before it got too big, before it got too scary. They were able to connect the student with a real easy intervention, basically partnering with a mentor, meets with them at the beginning and the end of the day, sets them up for success, and then increases how much praise he's getting through the day, how much structure and routine he has through the day. After a couple of weeks of that, the student reported that he really liked coming to school for the first time. Just how meaningful that is. The teacher reported that the disruptive behavior had gone down and even starting to participate in class a little bit. And then we actually got a message from the family saying that he was getting along with his brother and sister a little better. I can't promise that for everyone, but happy to report that this student made that progress. All these stories really just to say that MTSS is early identification and early intervention. We can do really, really good work with that comprehensive approach to finding the need and meeting the need as quickly as we can to support all of our kids. If you're interested in a little more detail, I would invite everyone in our community to either scan this QR code or go onto our website. It's a little too small to see, but on the academics tab, and then you go to the M, it says multi-tier systems of support. We have a 72-page handbook that goes into the details of what this work requires of us to make this happen for all of our kids. So we would invite everyone who's interested in that level of detail to explore that work. And then last thing before I hand it over to Luann, good work takes hard work, and there's a lot of people doing hard work to make this happen. So the folks you see on the screen there are just some of the folks that are doing that work. Of course, starting with our professional learning communities, our teams of teachers looking at data and acting on it every single day, our instructional coaches, support specialists, PBIS coaches, ELL liaisons, our administrative teams, and of course, families and communities all working together to make this happen for our kids. I'll turn it over to Luann to wrap it up.
Thank you, Scott. Well, I hope you've heard some recurring themes tonight. Most importantly, as we've shared those three areas with you, is the idea, the idea of communication and collaboration. Those are the keys to success. And one thing we know for sure is that you have a whole learning services team, along with everyone represented in this room, very proud to lead and serve and support learning in the Olathe Public Schools. So I'm very honored and pleased to be here representing Learning Services tonight along with my colleagues. And so we would really love to entertain any questions you may have.
I just thank you for the presentation and all of your work and collaboration, and it really hammers home the fact that you can't just hire a teacher and then put them in a classroom and just like, here we go. Like, there's a lot of support that has to go on, so I just appreciate all of the work that you and the team have done. Questions or comments? I know I see one.
Yeah. Thank you guys. So proud of you and grateful for you. Dr. Fluke, I had a question about the graphic. That I really like that. It encapsulates some of the finer details that I was even missing on MTSS. So thank you for that. Sometimes the visual is really important. I was wondering about, you were talking about the behavior screeners. Can you talk a little bit more? I mean, is that like a written assessment, or does the child answer, parent, teacher? I'd love to hear about that.
Of course, yeah. So there's, in behavior and with social emotional learning, we have we look at multiple data points. We do have a universal screener that either staff or our kindergarten and first grade and preschool students take on behalf of students. For second through 12th grade, that would be student completed, but we only use that universal screener for students for whom we have written parent consent to do so.
Okay.
Knowing that we'll never have 100% consent, we need multiple data points to make sure we're not missing students that might need some support. So we're also looking at what we call at-risk indicators. They're basically the ABCs: attendance, behavior as measured by office referrals and things like that, course grades for our secondary students, as well as that universal screening data. So all 4 of those data points come together to form not a complete, but a more holistic picture of the student and what they need.
Fantastic. I loved hearing about the turnaround of the student and even the difference at home. You might get a waiting list if everybody hears that story. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Others?
I've got a handful of questions if you're good, and I might go backwards so it makes it easier. Kind of questions around the screening, right? And so sometimes the screening may recognize the kids are at or acceptable levels. What is our process in the district for when a parent identifies that, okay, I didn't get an alert, but I think my child is struggling with one of their classes or reading? Can you talk to the mechanism for how because we talked a lot about the mechanisms within the district.
Sure.
How about the mechanisms to engage those at home who may hear or see or experience a frustrated child that may not be manifesting in the classroom? So what's that mechanism like for communication? How do we engage them and, et cetera?
Thanks. I'll speak to the behavior side, and then Lily, do you mind speaking to the academic side of that? So for behavior and social emotional learning and mental health, I think the most important thing is to always embrace the grit. We have all of these great systems to identify students who might need help, but no system is perfect, and there's always going to be a chance that we miss something. And families know their kids really, really well. So if a family were to reach out to us and ask for help, the number one thing we do is to listen. And the second thing we do is sit down and talk through what are you seeing? What do you feel like we're needing to do? And then working together to create a plan to support that student. That plan could range from something very informal, like we're just going to check in on the student a couple more times a day, have the counselor make sure they're having a good start to the day, all the way up to formal behavior plans if that's something that's indicated.
Very similar to what Scott just shared in regards to the BSEL component. Anytime a parent has concerns academically, we want to hear from them as soon as we can. Those teachers and those building administrators do. So for us, again, the first step is always going to be doing that very thorough listening, making sure we all, have a thorough understanding of that parent concern, and then really talking about what does that look like in the classroom? What are we seeing? I love the fact that he reminded everybody that whole piece of, no one data point is going to give us an entire picture. So sometimes that is, asking that question, what else do we need to look at? Our big phrase is that good data leads to good questions, and that also, that data, the parent input is part of that. So really digging in and thinking through, where is it that the student is struggling? How can we gather some more information? If we feel we have all the right information, what other interventions can we put in place for the student? We have guidance that we offer our educators on intensifying interventions. And so really being very strategic of what we're going to do with the student to help them either recoup a skill or whatever that may be to help them make some of that progress. And then ultimately, if things aren't playing out and working well, then we have other more advanced systems in place. But, any parent that is concerned, it really is reaching out and let's start the conversation so we can really gather all the input we need, make sure that we've exhausted all the avenues that we have for a student.
So thank you to both of you, because I was doing that on purpose as a setup. Parent-teacher conferences are coming. And it's incumbent on the parents that if their kids, they don't have to be getting D's and F's to be struggling, right? But what they communicate with their teachers, their instructors, is invaluable, and showing up and sharing what's going on at home, and so that they could hear teachers saying, it takes 45 minutes to do that same math lesson in class for Johnny when other kids are doing it in 15 minutes. How's that playing out at home, right? That level of communication with the community is wanted, it's desired by the teachers. And I asked that because I sort of knew where you're going. I wouldn't have said it purposely, but I wanted to make sure and remind the community and the teachers that opportunity is in another week or so, and they really ought to take advantage of it.
You bet, you bet. We hope we get lots and lots of parents that come out to conferences for exactly that reason. And I would also take a moment to point out that sometimes it's not so much about an academic skill as just a student learning how to play school, if you will. And so sometimes it is that whole piece of, how does a student prioritize what they're going to work on at night and how much time they're allotting to something? And so there's much more to it than just, do they know how to do math? Do they know how to answer the questions and find the answers to whatever's happening? So there are so many layers. As you all know, students are complicated creatures. And so we want to make sure that we tap into everything, and we want our parents to be there and be a partnership in that. So thank you.
And I know you all have talked to interventions for those that are struggling, but I also would love for someone to talk to how FastBridge is relatively new. I think we're only coming on this year will be a year, right? So it's a new baseline, different from MAPS, but also talk to how it's also an avenue of communication for those who are doing well that may need to be pushed, right? In the same classroom, you've got teachers who have said, I've got Johnny who's struggling and Bob who's, they're beyond what we're teaching, right? But they're recognizing that, and that's one of the things you've talked about. I'd love for you to talk about how you're using that data to recognize, helping the teachers recognize the strategies they use with different people.
Sure. So lots of different layers to that. So first of all, I would start by saying, FastBridge really is the screener to finding the concerns, to finding the struggling student. And so as a teacher, if I see, wow, I have students that there are no concerns, then we're going to start shifting gears on what other data are we looking at? How are we challenging that student? And, earlier when I was talking, I kind of alluded to the whole idea that we've had a strategy playbook that we have rolled out to teachers. And so it is that whole piece of, and it's just one option for a teacher, that whole idea of how can I take a lesson or this chunk of time and I can set it up to where all of those kids are getting everything they need. So it kind of goes back to that whole idea of the MTSS again. Every student deserves to have, their needs met. And so whether that's a student who is, doing really, really well or a student who's struggling. And so for us, it's a part of being able to get back in and work with teachers and making sure that they have different avenues at their fingertips so they can provide that enrichment, provide that challenge to a student. And that can look just so many, many different ways. So it really all is incumbent upon, what's the age of the student, what level of enhancement are they needing, what grade are they already in, what's the topic. But just making sure that our teachers really are equipped to have all of those different pieces there together. We also really encourage our teachers to be working with each other. We don't ever want a teacher thinking they're by themselves as they have to solve all these things. And so we really encourage that whole piece of, if you and I are working together with the same grade or the same skill, is there something that you can be doing to enhance while I'm doing to go back and recover some skills? Or, I'll create a different set of materials and things that we can use and you can create the other piece. And so that way it's not all upon me or all upon you to help our kids out.
You're leading right into where I was going to lead you, which was the
we are on the same wavelength tonight.
Talking about the PLCs and the importance. PLCs, we use a lot of acronyms. Professional Learning Centers, right?
Communities, professional learning communities.
Within each school, can you talk a little bit about the value and importance of that and hitting on the, not just brand new teachers, but even experienced teachers who may have been in the place for 15 to 20 years, new techniques, new processes, new curriculum, new literacy programs, and why that's really, really critical that we have it and that how they're using it. Because a lot of the folks outside the schools themselves aren't as familiar with why that's important and how we use that to drive all of the education with the teachers.
The number one thing as you're starting with your professional learning communities, you have to know your standards. So you really have to know the standard, know what it is that you're honed in on. What do our kids need to learn within this unit?
Part of the big three?
Part of the big three, absolutely. And then from that, being able to identify how are we going to know if our students are hitting that mark or not? Because it's not always about coming in and doing some standardized piece, but it's about as teachers, how are we going to know that whatever my learning target is that we set out and agreed upon, how are our kids hitting that? And do we really know that they're getting it? And then from there, being able to come back and talk about, gosh, what different strategies can we put in place that are going to help kids achieve that? One of the things that we constantly visit with our teachers about is, our students, if we all use the same strategy all day long, every day, our kids are going to get bored, right? So we have to, back to the big three, keep our kids engaged. So really, we have to make sure we're picking the right strategy that's going to help us hit the targets that we're after, that's going to keep our students highly engaged. And so really being able to take that information after we've implemented, come back to the table. Did we hit the mark? Are we where we need to be? And for those kids who struggled, didn't quite make it, what are we going to do to make sure they got that critical content? And so those really are very, very rich discussions with teachers that they can have for any curricular area that we have out there. Sitting in on our performing arts and listening to their PLCs, like that's pretty powerful as well. They're using that same practice. And so for us, that's just a piece across the board. But it is a very a highly valued time, I would say, for any of us as educators to make sure that we have the opportunity to be with that colleague, to make sure that we are helping each other through, whether it's, curriculum revisions are out there, new resources are out there, whatever the case may be, that we have time to really talk through how that's going to look and play out in our classrooms. You bet. Other questions we can answer for you?
Brad.
You bet. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we'll move into public comments. Mr. Boyd?
The Board of Education reserved limited time during its regular meetings for individuals to address the board. Individuals addressing the board should come to the podium at the front of the room when requested by the board president. When beginning your address to the board, we ask that you please state the name, the city where you live, and what schools your children attend or have attended in the district. Tonight, we request that individuals limit their comments to 3 minutes. A staff person will monitor the time and notify the speaker when their 3 minutes have expired. Please direct your comments to the entire board. If a response is appropriate, the president will respond or refer to another individual. We ask that speakers refrain from discussing complaints involving individual staff members or students if they have not been previously addressed to the district's administration. Out of respect for everyone in attendance, yelling, foul language, props, visuals, and addressing the audience are not permitted. In addition, audience members are not allowed to speak, yell, or give applause during public comments. This ensures the board is able to listen and then transition to the next speaker. Please note that those who disrupt the meeting in any capacity will be asked to leave and may lose the opportunity to attend future meetings.
Thank you. Our first speaker, Patty Lantern.
Hello. I don't know how that always happens. I don't like being first. Okay, so I have just a few things to say. Well, a million things to say, but only a couple tonight. Regarding the PRT emergency, we are all very happy that the child is doing okay. We all hope for a review and public dialogue on what worked, what didn't work as planned, and what adjustments in equipment and training are needed for all staff in every school. Thank you for taking care of that boy or person. I don't know if it's a boy or girl. We do not expect perfection, but do expect continual learning from every situation. The child is the number one priority. Keeping the other kids and staff safe going forward is the next priority. I wouldn't call it a people problem, but more of an equipment problem in my perspective. An adult should be able to have the autonomy to use their badge to urgently call rescue while not triggering lockdown, but also not having to wait for anyone else to assess the situation. A definite audible response would be necessary over the speakers to be assured that EMS is coming. Since the badges do not allow for that, modification seems necessary. Cell service in the vicinity of the school and inside is also extremely spotty. This needs to be addressed and improved with carriers. I'm very glad that the child is okay. Separate topic now. For all the board, if you hear words and blow them off, it's not actually happening in our schools. Please check into it on your own, regardless of what stakeholder groups may tell you is not actually happening and is not real. They are real, they're happening, and they're being pushed by various organizations, including the WEF, UNESCO, Bill Gates, and so very many others. If they're saying it's not happening, it's just gaslighting. It really, really is. We can see this tonight within the school board agenda. The curriculum changes proposed in the meeting under future items. I looked at the Kansas Department of Education. Curriculum for social studies and psychology does not look like it has changed as far as I could tell. The dates don't match up anyway. It is made clear on the KSDE that they do not make curriculum, that it is done locally. The changes I saw, there's globalist language added into world history and honors world history, pretty much all through the document. To me, globalist means bad actors that we do not want part of. In psychology also, there is some DEI language. Psychology values diversity, promotes equity, fosters inclusion in a pursuit of a more just society in the psychology framework for the local curriculum. That's the language of critical social justice, activism. The same language that subverts traditional religious belief for a new religious belief that one can change your gender, for example. What is it doing as part of the curriculum for psychology? This should not be happening. And
Thank you. Karen Bishop?
I am Karen Bishop. I sent my 3 kids through Olathe Public Schools, and I'm the librarian at Mission Trail Middle School. I'm here tonight to talk about the 1-year anniversary of a devastating staffing cut, the elimination of library clerks at the secondary level. Library clerks make libraries run seamlessly. Their primary jobs are circulation and maintaining the collection, but they do so much more. The best part is that they're the constant in the space that allows the librarian to teach lessons, attend PLCs, work on collection development, manage our budgets, collaborate with educators, and so much more to promote traditional literacy and information literacy. I cannot express to you the entirety of what this loss means, but I'll give you one example. Comparing a book talk lesson from last January when I had a clerk to this January when I don't. Last January, I would have spent time with the teacher beforehand, understanding the class's specific needs, the theme or the genre or the overarching lesson we're working on. I would pull pertinent books just for that lesson. I would book talk with the entire class, getting them excited about reading in general and the lesson in particular. After the book talks, the enthusiastic readers would go find their books on their own, and I would work with the reluctant readers just to try to hook them on one more book, anything that'll keep them reading just a little bit longer. Along the way, I would also be working with the teacher to see what's coming up next and how the library can support that work. This January, I don't have time to collaborate beforehand. I've got a full book return bin and carts that need to be shelved, so I can't round up the books easily for the class. I cut the book talk short because the phone keeps ringing and there's a kid who needs help with his device and another kid who needs to check out for a different class. I can't work with the struggling readers afterwards because the whole class is lined up and restless, waiting to check out. The teacher and the students and I, we're all gonna leave that encounter completely dissatisfied. That teacher is never gonna ask me to work on research next week with them. The students aren't gonna see me as the skilled reader advisor that I am, and it's just gonna lead to declines in library services from then on. Libraries are significant investments that we've already made. Consider the square footage in every single one of our buildings, the annual budget on books and electronic resources, the highly educated librarians. Most of us have a master's degree, but you're not utilizing us in that way. The fact that this board asked the community to support high school library improvements with our last bond issue. Skimping on staffing for the lowest paid classified position in the district, no less. These clerks make about $15,000 a year. This is not a huge savings. This is an absolute waste of the investment that we've already made. One of the most devastating effects of this cut is the fact that 5 of us, there are only 15 secondary of us, 5 of us have left the profession early because of this decision. Study after study confirms that well-staffed libraries affect student learning, and I ask you to please reinstate our library clerks.
Thank you. Next, we have Bangan Brooks.
Good evening, Board of Education. My name is Megan Bricks, and I'm a teacher here in the Olathe School District, and I live in DeSoto. Tonight, I came here with one real purpose, mainly related to what I do here every month. So my big passion is advocacy, and to me, that means using my voice, someone using their voice, advocating for something that they truly believe in, something that hits home to them, and using their voice to speak about that. And this week, I was so thankful to see members of yourselves up representing and advocating for public education here in our capital. Our Johnson County School District's legislative priorities are extremely special to my heart. It's fully fund special education, revise open enrollment legislation, and support student mental health. And so to me, I want to come here and thank you for doing that work, because we as a school district need to continue that work and show people that advocating for what we believe in is what we have to continue to do. Even though it's the work takes dedication and time and energy, it's what our students need. For students to be prepared for their futures, we have to go to the Capitol. We have to show them that we as a school district deserve the best for our students. And I come here each month wanting the best for my students. And just from my heart to yours, I just truly thank you, especially Dr. Yeager, for representing us so well. Thank you for doing what is best for the students here in Olathe and continuing to push that forward. Thank you for using advocacy in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public comments. We'll move into the consent agenda now. I guess I would ask if, as I always do, if there's anything that board members have questions on or would like to pull off of the consent agenda. Otherwise, I would seek a motion for approval.
I move to approve consent agenda items numbered 6.01 to 6.09 as presented.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Boyd, a second by Mr. Kuhn.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Mrs. Felter,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to section 7, action bids, contracts, and agreements. Basically the same question. Does anyone have any questions on any of these items?
I would, if it's okay. Like, I know in the community sometimes on 7.05, I would
Okay.
love for, if Dr. Yeager has someone that can speak a little bit to, I live in the world of data warehouses and data marts, that kind of stuff, but it's not an easy conversation, point for everyone to understand what we have, how to get there, what's the data in there, how it's utilized, and the value proposition to it, perhaps, go into that.
Sure. I may make a couple of introductory comments as Dr. Veach is heading up. One of the things that you all well know based on the process that you experience as board members is we use lots of different data systems as a school system. That's not unique to us, but one of the things that is unique to us is pulling all the data pieces together to meet the needs of students and to meet the needs of individual students. So really, when you look at this data warehouse, and the title might not be great, to be honest with you, but that's what it's recognized as in the industry. But it's really an opportunity for us to put a platform in front of our administrators, our school teams, and eventually our teachers that gives them the ability to go to one spot to get a total data picture of a student. So it's their student achievement data, it's some of the things that Dr. Flute talked about, their behavior data, their attendance data, those kinds of pieces. So a team is able to spend their time really looking at interpreting that data, understanding what that data means versus going in and out of multiple data systems to pull the data together to make a profile, if you will, of a student. Dr. Veach is the one that's really leading that implementation, so she'd be able to give you, more information about where we are, what we're currently doing with it, and that kind of thing.
So we, last January, as that was approved, we spent the spring and summer working closely with the company to really talk about what is it for Olathe, what does that mean, and really thinking through how our teachers and how our administrators would utilize this. At the end of the day, regardless of what we do, it's really the person who's closest to the student desk. So those teachers and people within that building, they have to be able to quickly grab their data have that big picture of knowing a student that they're talking about. And so this fall in September, mid-October, we started then, we were ready to launch, and so we started working with our building principals, and we trained all of them. We trained all of our counselors. We've trained, we really looked at that first layer as to who's the most critical, and we brought that group in. And then from that, we are now going back and we are stepping into individual buildings, and we're working with the smaller individual teams there. I say smaller because we've asked every building to think through their staff and who might be that next layer as to who would be really wanting to get the ability to understand and utilize the data warehouse. Our goal is that at some point in time, every teacher is going to be trained and they're going to be able to jump in there and grab what they want. But recognizing that all of our teachers have, their bandwidth might be full right now. And so the best training we can do is, as teachers are ready for that, we can jump in and we can grab them and we can get that training going. The other piece with that, though, is that even though we as a district have built some initial pieces for teachers and administrators to be able to grab and look at, we also know that I can build a generic model, but you as the building principal, you and your team, your teachers, you may have different data you want to look at. And so you may want to set something up differently. So that is our next layer of training that we've already started working on, is for those folks who are like, they just have embraced it. I will tell you, district-wide, everyone has just absolutely embraced it. But we need to be able to train you as a building to also say, you know what, here are the 3 pieces of data we really want to see right beside each other. And so how can we build that so that we can get in there and we can look at it, monitor it, and continue to go? I would say at this point in time, we have been in, over a third of our buildings, and that's since, at the beginning of January when we started moving out into the buildings to be able to do some of that training. And overwhelmingly, everybody is absolutely loving it. I just did 2 days at Olathe North, and after, I did yesterday and then I did again today. And so when I showed back up today to continue that training with a different set of teachers, just the comments from that first group, the high school teachers just embracing it and loving it, and how they can track very specific data that they have. And then the same goes when we step into an elementary school, hearing those teams really talk about, wow, just the power of knowing they don't waste a lot of time. And waste probably isn't the fair word, but just knowing it doesn't take a lot of time trying to find all the right data they need talking about a specific student, because that can be different for every kid. And so the data warehouse allows us to have all that in one spot, and you can pull the different data that you want to look at.
One of the things that I may add to, Julie talked earlier about just our principals meetings and what that looks like with that school improvement data analysis piece. And that's one of the pieces that's consistently being used at principals meetings, is our learning services team coming in and saying, let's pull up ION and let's look at this data in a different way. And for a building principal, whether it's a school of 200 kids or 2,000 kids, our expectation is they're the instructional leader of the building that sets that expectation for what's happening in terms of meeting kids' individual needs. And so this really gives them the opportunity to very quickly hone in on, if I need to know the kids in my school that are most at risk, couple buttons and I can generate a list really quickly that triangulates the data so I have a sense of that. So it could be from learning challenges to tardies to behavior, all those kinds of things. And, oftentimes we find that kids that are challenged in one of those areas isn't just challenged in one of those areas, that many times there's some other areas that are involved in that as well. And in the past, it took a lot more time, intention, and investigation to figure that out than having it all in one spot. So it's something that's really been a positive thing. And the other thing I might mention is, we really landed in this place on the end of the pandemic, towards the end of the pandemic, where we really realized as a system that overall we're still performing well, but we know that we have students that we're going to have to catch up, we're going to have to meet their needs, and this is one of the solutions that we came up with at that time.
And I would add to that, kind of the flip side is that we wouldn't want us to focus in on just one data point, and so the system really sets itself up that you need to look across the board and see all the different things that might be impacting a student, and that's the beauty of this as well, is that you can see multiple pieces at one time.
A couple questions. How often, knowing that data is in a number of various systems, how often is that integrated data ported to the data warehouse refreshed?
Nightly.
Good, that's awesome.
So there's a vast majority of it that's refreshed nightly, and then obviously Some of it can't be refreshed until semester, for example, if you got a credit for a class or not. But no, that is a regular system update, and our technology department has been amazing in working with ION to make sure that we have all of that, like right there, rolls overnight, fresh data ready for us to go.
I want to share it for a lot of folks. Data is data, and it's useless. It makes everybody's eyes roll back. I think one of the things you hit on, which was really important, is that knowing what kinds of things that your teams care about, your presentation of that to them, is what really is empowerment, right? It's data, knowledge, and then what do I do with it? What you were just talking about, well, is like, as you're talking to schools like Olathe North, what's there? What can it mean to you, and how could I use that? Or have we gotten to the point yet, it's kind of early in the process, where there's the I'm a teacher, my students, my class, where they could go and log in and see a reflection of how are my kids doing without doing a lot of extra data mining of their own, right?
Right.
Have we set it up yet to
So yeah, as a
log in and say,
teacher,
hey, I'm Mr. Smith or whatever it is, and here's my class, like, so they quickly can gather data like a dashboard.
You bet. So it really is by roster, and so a teacher can log on there right now and see as a whole, how are my kids doing, with whatever that can be. It does not, to all transparency, it doesn't track like the daily assignments, so
Right.
your grade book is set up for that. But this is really looking at some other big data points that we would have to dig elsewhere to find. But yes, teachers, they absolutely can look at that within their roster and what that is. And so that's part of the system that's automatic. And so, again, the beauty of it is that, we as a building have the things we care about, but then as a department, you have things that you want to focus on. As grade level teachers teaching the same content, you have things that you want to focus on. And then as a teacher myself, I have things that I want to track. And ION lets us do all of that.
There's always software licensing, and then there's the professional services of what does this mean to you, right? And so when we talk to the community about cost, there's that function of translating that knowledge transfer to our team, that work in IT, and then to you all, and then to the teachers. And that's an evolving process, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Just because data is available doesn't mean everybody gets it. And I beg a little patience, right? Knowing that I work in this industry, not for them,
right.
But it takes time for adoption and adaption, right? Then utilization, and that's what you focus on every day is get them to say, oh, I see. Right?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And we just have truly been focusing on you as an individual building. You know what your staff and you need right now. So you tell us so we can come in and work with you, because we do need to make that so every user that's able to access understands it and is able to make it functional for them, and they see the value in it. You bet.
Thank you.
One of the things too that I would mention, I'm sorry to belabor this conversation a little bit, but one of the things that I would mention specifically too is that ION, one of the reasons why they were selected as our partner in this work is, Julie and our learning services team are on the phone connected with them almost every single day. So whereas some companies we work with, they come and say this is exactly how you have to do it. They're really a company that's nimble with us as we get feedback from our staff through our learning services division, that they're literally making updates to the product very frequently.
They've been amazing.
Yeah,
Yes.
almost on a weekly basis to meet our needs and the kinds of things that make sense to us and our staff, which is also unique sometimes in this space. So.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Dr. Shannon.
Others? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve items 7.01 through 7.06 as presented.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Beveridge, a second by Mrs. Felter.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Mrs. Felter,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge.
Yes.
All right, motion is approved unanimously. Moving on to action other. So, congratulations again to Mr. Boyd for his other assignment.
Had to figure out how to say that?
Well, it's a little different. But we are happy for you. Or at least I am. I won't speak for the board. But we do have to appoint someone to finish out Mr. Boyd's term on the Kansas Association of School Boards, the legislative committee. That will expire April of 2023. This is another one of those weird ones, so I will remind everybody that we'll seek a nomination or nominations. We will have one motion to cease nominations and then another motion to appoint the representative. So with that,
I
see
think I know
Leetta
the
looking at me.
perfect person. If you're willing, Julie, I think you would be phenomenal. I mean, you've already plugged in actively with KASB and show an active interest. I would love to see you in that role if you're willing.
Okay, thank you. Yes, yeah, I am willing. Thank you. I enjoy what I've done so far with KASB, so thank you.
Good.
I would move to cease nominations.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Beveridge, a second by Mr. Boyd.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Mrs. Felter,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes,
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn.
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved unanimously. I would
Great.
seek a motion to appoint Julie Steele to serve on the KASB Legislative Committee for the remaining term expiring April of 2023.
So moved.
So moved. Oh, go ahead.
I got a motion by Mr. Boyd. Can I count that as a second, Mrs.
Count
Felter?
me as a second, an
Awesome.
enthusiastic one.
Motion by Mr. Boyd, second by Mrs. Felter.
Mrs. Felter,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
yes,
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mrs. Steele, for
thank you.
being willing to serve, and I appreciate this board that there's a lot of different committees that we are appointed to, right? And so I appreciate that we're all willing to take a little bit of a turn and sort of share in that burden. Not burden, that's not the right word. Opportunity, thank you.
Voluntold.
Guys, you know me. We'll move on to future action items. As always, if you've got questions, please be sure to funnel those to Dr. Yeager so that he can get you an appropriate response before we have to vote on them. We've got quite a few this time around. Additionally, information written. Hopefully you've all had a chance to check out the Head Start Director's Report and the update on bond projects.
Can I point out how great Head Start's doing? 100% of their lead tests are completed, and all in the high 90% on all of their other screenings. And I want to especially note there's 21 children on the waiting list. I always want to point that out because we sure would accept a larger federal grant for Head Start here in Olathe if they would offer it. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think that's right. Board topics for discussion. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to bring forth?
Okay.
Brad wants to go. Brad wants to go.
Go, Brad. Go, Brad.
Mr. Boyd?
I'm going to make it quick.
No, you're good. No, it's your
No,
meeting, sir.
I honestly, I hope our community is taking the opportunity to get back into our schools. I've had a chance to have soup and bingo, which I didn't think worked well together, but I tell you, it was a fantastic time. I never seen so many excited kids about bingo in my life, but exciting to be back into the schools and seeing parents in there enjoying the community that Dr. Schleider have created at Indian Creek. And then secondly, Spencer Brown was already mentioned once tonight. I had an opportunity to see the entire Commons at Olathe North filled with 4th and 5th graders taking part in a math wings competition, which I thought was just the coolest thing because I can tell you, as a 4th or 5th grader, signing up to do more math is something that I wouldn't have done, but you know, it was cool to see these kids excited about the challenge of math. So encouraging our community to get involved, get back into our schools, and observe the great learning that and experience that our kids are having.
It's awesome. Thank you. Others? See Mrs. Felter.
I just have to brag on Dr. Yeager. Yesterday, we were in Topeka and doing advocacy for education, and that's explaining how our needs could be met by legislative acts this session, essentially, and why it's impactful for our students and teachers. And he did so great. I was just, I won't say he's the smartest guy in the room, but yeah, he did great. He did a great job. Well, Brad was in that room, so one of the smartest guys in the room. Oh, and Brian was in the room too. So
I just stood behind Leetta.
so it was just, I mean, being rather new, and it's kind of the first normal-ish session since the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, it was my honor to be there to support you. You know, I feel like the big sister that, you know, but you really hit it out of the park. One of the legislators said, you know, if any of you guys happen to have any numbers on this SPED fully funding impact, Dr. Yeager was the first one up there, and I happened to be sitting next to a gentleman, and he leaned over, he goes, smartest guy in the room. That's where I got that line. So I was like, I don't disagree. So, and then I had a direct line of sight to Representative Boyd. He looked so dignified and engaged and restrained because he knew you could have just jumped right in, right? And answered a lot of the questions, but making us proud in Olathe. We're very proud of you. And then Brian, thank you for showing up. I thought it was drinking through a fire hose, right? Learning a lot at once, but you did great. He engaged, actively told the Olathe story. I was very proud of you. So thank you very much. I just had to really brag on Team Olathe. Well done, guys.
I love it, and thank you for those that have done that and have done that in the past. I know almost all of us have,
Yep.
you know, showed up in Topeka to advocate. It is important. It's important that they hear our voice, and I think that we represent well. So thank you again for everybody who made that trip. I guess I'm on the hook next time, which is fine. Others? I see Mr. Connell.
So I'm going to tag team what Leetta said. So I know she had help, so John, thank you. But if you have not seen Leetta's post on her personal as well as professional page of yesterday and the articulation of what Dr. Yeager was really talking about and shared with our legislators and its importance and why Olathe is over half the gross amount of dollars that were not there for special ed, right? Olathe has had a reputation for many years of being that place that attracted families who knew that their kids, if they were in need of something special, were gonna find it in Olathe. We have more students, almost 6,000 students taking part in some of our special programs. And with that comes the need for specialists, teachers, aides, and help. And our budget of that is a 35, well, I think we transferred about $25-30 million or something like that, right? So our budget is about 60 million tied to our special education services, if I remember correctly from the budget.
So I'll tell you, if you want me to interrupt your
Yeah, throw it
comments to
in.
tell you.
Get me right.
So fiscal year 22, it's $63,057,000 is our total sped. That's not our transfer, that's our total. Our projected for this year is $69,711,000. Our transfer last year from general fund to special education was $28,778,000. This year it's projected to be $34,017,000. Not all of that would be covered by state aid. So last year, if you look at state aid alone, had it been funded at the excess cost of 92%, we would have received another $17 million in state aid last year. And then also this year, our estimate is that it would be about $20.5 million.
And the reason I wanted to call that out in public on the dais is that if fully funded, not just funded everywhere, but fully funded, there would be the funds in a lot of ways to be able to cover what Karen Bishop is asking for in those library clerks, for those specialists in the classrooms, to work with all the children who are struggling, to really fully fund our MTSS the way it needs to be, to properly address the needs of each and every child, right? Now, Leetta smiled because it's like, there is an education to being on the school board, and when you hear it, see it, feel it, and when Dr. Yeager presented that, it was kind of interesting. Now, Brad knows the numbers, but some of the faces were like, y'all are fully half of all the funds in the whole county that were moved from, right? So we have to be conscious and aware of why we go and deal with the legislators, why we ask what we ask, and how it's important, because we do need to fund our teachers, our classified staff, our specialists, and it is getting harder. One of the big conversations was how hard it is to find and to retain the best teachers, right? You know, one of the conversations, we used to have 100 teachers that were lining up for every open position, and it's getting harder and harder, and we're all competing for the same people in Johnson County, right? And so that is one of the conversations, right, that we want to be aware of, and we want to be sensitive to. Another point that Dr. Yeager made that is really important is the timeliness of funding from the state, right? Something I've learned over the last years and all the conversations is when you have a growing school district, as it was for years, and now Spring Hill's dealing with some of that, it's like, we're going to take those kids, whether we budgeted for them or not, right? That means if we need the teachers, we're going to go get them, and that money's got to come from somewhere, usually the general fund or from reserves. The need or the advocacy for the legislature, the state of Kansas, to be more timely in their allocation of budget so that we're not behind in all our negotiations with our teachers and staff. We know what's going to come and when it's going to come. That was really, really important to hear it and have it articulated really, really well. And so when we're in Topeka, that is the conversations we're having, right? It's not a left or a right or Republican or Democrat. It's, can we do the right things for the population? And when you've got almost 30,000 students, you know, always being what feels like 6 months behind and knowing if you're, as John always says, 6 months behind on whether or not we're actually going to get that money, right, is painful. And it means we make some hard decisions that would be easier if, right? So I want to make sure that that's why, and, you know, Leah, I always tell her is that one thing I'm good at is showing up. And so that allows me to transfer to one of the things I wanted to talk about is that the Fathers Clubs committees in Olathe, there's one at every high school. We'll be expanding into the middle schools. I understand there's an article coming out here soon, which I have just barely heard about. But the committee chairs at all the 5 high schools are meeting February 5th. So if it's something you have an interest in, you have had grandkids, dads, please, we need to grow that, because just like Brad said, having all those kids in the schools and all the volunteers in the schools, that really matters. But a few shout outs. I want to thank Megan Bricks. She sent an invitation and said, hey, we'd love to have you. And I always looked at it and it's like, they asked, I'm going to try. And I was able to show up at Forest View in they're a Franklin Covey Leader in Me school. Wow, hearing kindergartners articulate that and walk through their books, that was an amazing morning of leadership from the children up that clearly had been taught really, really well. Most adults in this country don't get that Franklin Covey mindset, and our kids are really getting it, and that's really, really powerful. And I wanted to thank Megan for sending the invite, and for the others, thank goodness I'm really excited because Rome has asked me to come read, and other schools are inviting. I tried to. And so for the parents who've invited me, I was invited to go watch wrestling. So I got to go watch some wrestling. And I went to the OATC. They had an open night. And there I met a senior who had just qualified for 2 state events in swimming and diving. And so his parents said, well, come tomorrow night. So I got to go see the swim team. So that you all know, not all of us published 99% of what we're doing within the schools. Today, we had Head Start meeting. Then I was at Santa Fe and then at Sunnyside. Engagement is really strong, and I want to always know that I see these folks in the schools. Maybe you all don't, because we don't always talk about it, but it's really important that you get there. I mentioned earlier teacher conferences. So your kid's making straight A+. There's always better, right? There's never be satisfied, be better. Find out what they can do and how do they finish strong. We were talking to Ms. Gunderson at Olathe North, and she was, boom, threw us stuff at us. We found scholarships. I got a graduating senior. We don't know unless we know, and we don't know until we're talking to you, to the teachers. So have those conversations, because every $3,000 or $4,000 in college is worth a lot to us. So the last thing is tomorrow for the teachers and staff, there was a survey sent out to all of you all. It's really, really important to Dr. Yeager, to the board, the busing situations, we're lacking drivers. We need to have feedback about times and start times. We really need every person who works with this district to provide their feedback and their commentary, because that's a critical piece of the work that Dr. McMullen's going to be in charge of over the next 30 days, of meeting with families, members of the community, the teachers, the staff, administrators, to try and find something that's right and best for all of us in Olathe. So thanks, Shannon.
No, I think great comments.
Gives me a
Thank
chance
you.
to push all that stuff.
Anyone else? Dr. Yeager, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm going to have to spend some time going through my list to see what's been wiped out by our conversation tonight. So, just a couple things as we wrap up tonight. The first one, I appreciate the comments about the survey. I was going to mention that. Thank you to the staff members that have taken time to take that. That is great information for us, and we appreciate that. Austin Allen in his video tonight, wasn't that something? I had comments that I was going to thank our students who participated in the MLK competition or celebration. And, as we think about this being Black History Month and the things related to loving people and, inclusivity and those kinds of things, I don't think I could have said it any better than Austin did in his video tonight. So I'm just really proud of him for the work that he's done. I won't rehash all the information about yesterday. I appreciate all the kind comments about the time in Topeka. I will say that the 6 Johnson County superintendents had the opportunity to meet with the governor yesterday before we met with the legislative delegation. And, the governor, like the legislators that we met with, really appreciated just the ear and the honest conversations and the honest questions and those kinds of things. We certainly are at a time where we may not always agree with our elected officials, but having people that will sit down and listen to your perspective and what you share is so important and so valued. So I just wanted to say that. The other really nice thing that happened yesterday, too, was the culmination of a meeting that Mr. Whitcliffe and I attended, 3 or 4 weeks ago, which was all the Johnson County superintendents and our board presidents met together. We reviewed all of our legislative priorities together and came up with some foundational ones that all of Johnson County could get behind and support. And Megan did a nice job of listing the 3 of those tonight, as did others. And it really sends a message when we as Johnson County can work together like that. There were times probably where we competed against each other for a lot of different things. We still do occasionally on a Friday night, that kind of thing. But the reality is that, right now, what's good for one Johnson County school district is typically good for all of us. And I'm just really proud that our school board presidents and superintendents were able to come together to get some of those priorities outlined and clarified so we can share those together. Lots of comments tonight. I appreciate these, but we had administrative staff this week where I have the opportunity and other SLT members to interact with all of our administrators from across the districts or the district, and I had them share things they were doing around community engagement coming up. And there are some cool things that are going to be happening in our schools. Maybe not as cool as soup and bingo. That was I wouldn't put those together either.
Top soup and bingo.
But that's awesome. Jay Novacek, maybe you should try that at West. Soup and bingo, buddy. But the reality is that our schools are doing a lot of cool things to bring our community in. And so, as many of you said, just keep coming, keep being involved. That's really sending an important message and also helping our community see the tremendous things that our staff is doing each and every day in our schools. So keep visiting. Lots of questions in the last few days about a Chiefs parade that is now scheduled on February 15th. That happens to coincide with the Wednesday of conferences. So our situation maybe is a little dynamic, but just want you all in our community to know that we're trying to work through that and determining what it can look like. And as a Chiefs fan, I hope they get the opportunity for us to worry about what we do that day. But just to know we're working on that. We'll hope to share some some plans, and there's a little bit of me that's superstitious, so I'm scared to say, like, if they win, here's what we're gonna do, right? So,
Please don't.
but we're working on it. We're working to have plans in place and what have you. So just know that we're continuing to work on that. You know, it's kind of funny to think about this, but many of us joked at our last meeting that it was all about Dr. McMullen. I don't know if you remember that, but you know, we had a lot of Dr. McMullen conversation at our last meeting, but we really should have saved it for this month because today is Jim's birthday. Sorry, Jim, I couldn't pass the opportunity.
Still all about Dr. McMullen.
And there you go. You are a gift to us, Dr. McMullen. And then last but not least, I have an opportunity tonight to ask Dr. Triplett to stand up to be recognized. Come on, get on your feet there. There you go. You may have seen, but Dr. Triplett has been named as the next superintendent of the Normandy Schools Collaborative outside of St. Louis, a district that I know he's going to serve well and just do an exceptional job with. So, Dr. Triplett, I just want to thank you for your service to our district and wish you nothing but the best as you transition to a great new opportunity.
Awesome. Okay, I understand we need 2 executive sessions.
We do.
First one?
15 minutes, please.
Okay.
I move the board adjourn to executive session to discuss salary, benefits, and related items of the bargaining unit pursuant to exception for employer-employee negotiations under COMA, and the board returns to the regular meeting at 7:50.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Boyd, second by Mrs. Steele.
Mrs. Felter?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Yes.
Mr. Boyd?
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
discussing non-elected personnel exemption under coma, and that the board return to the regular meeting. Did he say 15 minutes? 10 minutes at 8 o'clock.
Second.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Okay.
You look forward to it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Did your son win?
Is that Miss Kaylee back